Thanks very much, Matt. Well, we certainly saw some difference in performance between some of the different drivers yesterday. Villeneuve, as you say, up there. Panis was way down. I think the problem was some of the drivers had particular mechanical problems yesterday, and that did affect them in terms of trying to set a quick time. But we'll have to see what happens this morning. 2 sessions of free practice, 2 45-minute sessions separated by just half an hour. So we'll see how it goes with the build-up towards qualifying, John.
Yes, but what was noticeable yesterday is that between 5th place and 19th there was less than 1 second. So it's going to be very competitive. But of course what we saw on Friday will not be what we expect to see, not so much in these 2 45-minute sessions, but at the end of qualifying, when the big boys will really get their big guns out here at Indianapolis and try and improve on last year's pole position time, 1 minute 11 seconds. And we would expect that to be broken fairly comfortably, as Michael Schumacher yesterday, with a limited amount of running with Ferrari because of Barrichello's problems, we would expect Ferrari in these very misty, high humidity conditions right now to be out on track with his teammate, and both Ferraris doing a lot more work than they were able to do yesterday due to Barrichello's misfortune with turn 13.
Well, let's hope that we don't get any similar problems today and that everybody's got that sorted out for these 2 sessions. Decent turnout of people despite the rather misty conditions, and we're expecting it to get a little warmer throughout the course of today. Weather forecast is pretty good for both today and for race day as well. Juan Pablo Montoya didn't have a great day yesterday. They had an engine problem which rather limited his running in the second part of the free practice session, so he ended down in 16th place. His teammate Ralf Schumacher put in a pretty good programme of laps throughout the day, ended up with the 10th fastest time, but Williams really not showing their hand particularly in the first session yesterday. Well, we'll have to see if they can do a little bit better this time. Ralph did qualify second here last year, and you can just see how murky and misty the conditions are as we prepare for the start of this session.
Well, I mean, those are the pictures. Now, that's a high camera shot looking down and through the murk. When you're at ground level, it isn't as bad, but nonetheless, it is still here as we about to start at 9 o'clock in the morning in Indianapolis. Takuma Sato waits, having last time yesterday he had a harmless spin and a relatively harmless nudge into the tower wall on grass that was absolutely slippery beyond belief. So anybody that got off track, hit the grass, well, they're on a long ride, sometimes quite slow, into the tire barriers.
Cars on track at Indianapolis then, and the American Grand Prix meeting gets underway for its second day, and let the track conditions without those puddles that we did see yesterday for that first session, so at least they can get on with it straight away. Michael Schumacher already climbing aboard the Ferrari. He left it a long time yesterday until he came out onto the track, but let's just remember that he was fastest by quite a margin in that session yesterday. In fact, even he said that he was surprised.
Jacques Villeneuve already has a little spin, and that was down in turn 2, quite out of the pits, and even though his tyres had those tyre blankets on it before he left the pits, track conditions, track temperature clearly still relatively low. It's at 17 degrees Celsius just prior to going out. So drivers need to be careful. It's a low grip surface, and with low temperatures the combination could be quite tricky.
Radio check there from Sato. Ooh, bit of smoke there from a lot of smoke.
He came out of turn 10 and all the way down, and that's a major blow up.
All right, track padlock, mate.
Whoa, look at that one go.
Dear oh dear, what a start. Installation lap, and that's it.
Ben, excitement. Villeneuve spins out of the pits in turn 2. Takuma Sato talking on the radio to the team, running slowly. Major engine failure, and the car pulls off just before the entry into turn 11 and walks away, and that's the end of his session. And again, a further setback for Jordan, who really would like to have had. Well, let's look again and see. This is the Villeneuve moment, and just maybe a bit of brain fade.
I don't know, that was a strange one there, wasn't it?
It was, totally odd. But here's the one that caught our attention. He's talking on the radio at this point, then that little trace, I thought it was a brake he'd locked on, but in fact it's the left bank of that V10 Honda engine. And it being interviews yesterday with Honda engineers telling us how happy they were with the reliability of these engines, and there she goes. And look, a little conflagration behind it. Well, that's quickly extinguished. It's more just the fuel, or certainly oil, that would be in the exhaust igniting, and it burns up pretty quickly.
Yes.
Sato being brought back
already, yes. You're right, John. Otmar Safnauer was talking to us yesterday, and he was saying that they would be using a qualifying engine today, so you do wonder a little bit whether that's the special engine that's let go. Meanwhile, there is Fisichella now, of course.
Like we just said, isn't it? I think that, to be honest, the track is going to be very, very slippery. For the baseline, we could take a clicker front wing off or something like that, just to make it a bit more comfortable. You know, leave everything else as it is, and we'll just take a clicker front wing off. Yeah, do that, please, Phil. One click down. Just checking now on the telemetry, just to have a look at.
Well, Ferrari out on track, and as we said, drama yesterday for Rubens Barrichello. Let's hear what Ross Brawn has to say about what happened yesterday.
You lost a lot of running time yesterday for Rubens Barrichello. Are you 100% sure what happened yet? What put him into the wall?
It's not completely clear. We had a severe loss of pressure of the left rear tyre, which meant the tyre came off the rim, and that's what put him into the wall. It's not clear to us why we lost the pressure. There's a number of possibilities, but unfortunately the damage was such that it wasn't possible to completely conclude what it was. But so it was a severe loss of pressure left rear. It could have been a wheel, it could have been a tyre, it could have been something else, we're not sure.
Now Rubens is just getting ready in the garage. Is he going out in a brand new chassis?
Yes, we had a spare chassis, so what we did is we swapped the chassis, and in fact we repaired yesterday's chassis last night, and that's now the spare for the weekend. We have 4 chassis at a race meeting, 3 on the cars and 1 spare. So we did a chassis swap last night, so effectively he's got a new car this morning.
And Rubens, does he feel like a new man or a very old man this morning?
No, he's in good shape.
Excellent.
It's not a very difficult track technically, so I don't think it's going to affect him too much. And Michael had a good program yesterday, and we'll work on that.
Ross, thank you.
So still a little bit of, not confusion, but not all the knowledge that they would like at Ferrari. There is the rather smoky remains of Takuma Sato's car. It's just going to have to sit out the session out there on the back part of the track. And that is the end of his session, because they'll just have to try and get a car sorted out for qualifying. So Rubens Barrichello in the Ferrari now. He has just completed his installation lap. That's all been done safely. Everybody, in fact, has done 1 installation lap so far.
Yeah, so the reason that Ferrari have got a spare tub in conjunction with those 3 complete cars is that the teams will send all the equipment from Indianapolis straight to Japan for the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. And even the event of them needing either to rob one car, to pay the other one, or an incident like yesterday, well then they can repair the damaged tub as they did overnight, but not take a risk. They built up a new car effectively for Rubens around that spare tub, which would have been complete in every sense, with the exception of it wouldn't have had an engine gearbox attached to it, but all the electronics and all the wiring that would be required, very complex indeed, that would be all in situ, all the oil and fuel lines. So a long night's work for Ferrari, but maybe in some sense a lot easier than having to wait for the damage to the tub to be repaired before they then start to rebuild the car.
Montoya family here with their own little perch in the pit lane, just alongside the Williams garage. It's an ideal place to be, with Montoya on that side of the garage, ready to come out as they make the checks on the car now that he has completed his installation lap, and he'll be hoping for somewhat less problems than he suffered yesterday. And they had an engine problem. They actually inspected the bores in the engine with special little scopes that go down into the spark plug holes. They seemed to think the engine was okay, but when they sent him back out there was still a problem, so he had to pull over and end the session on the grass. Great support though for the Colombian here this weekend, as you can see.
Indeed there is a lot of support, and of course many Colombian families have emigrated to North America, and some of them may be in the Indianapolis region, but a great support for the man who won here in 2000 in his first attempt in India. Was that his first attempt?
Yes, he was a rookie, yeah.
He was a rookie. First, I think, a rookie other than Graham Hill. The only other rookie to win at Indianapolis was Graham Hill in 1966. So Juan Pablo Montoya, obviously a popular man in the state of Indiana.
Yes, very much so. Well, a bit of work going on at Ferrari. Toyota this weekend are getting used to the Indianapolis track for the first time, and Nick Damon is talking to team manager Ange Pasquale.
Ange Pasquale, we're here now at the end of the pit lane where the car's becoming at very high speeds around the corner, and you're very worried, I understand.
Well, it's true, it's a very impressive corner, and it's the first time in the championship we have a banking corner like this. It was quite impressive, especially for us, when we saw the crash of Rubens yesterday. It must be very exciting for the spectator to see such a high-speed corner with a profile of a banking.
But obviously the problem is inside there, of course, is this new pit lane where they've made it much quicker going round the corner next to the wall.
Yes, it's a bit of a concern for us as the pit entry now, the speed limit is quite close to our pits. We will see today, and if need be, we will discuss with Charlie today.
Now, for the last 2 years, Ferrari have had this first pit. Do you know why that got changed around this year and you've ended up with this first pit?
Well, maybe to be closer to the race control room.
Thanks, Ange.
Well, that's an interesting comment from Ange Pasquale. Of course, Ferrari down at the other end of the pits and indeed nearer race control. I wonder if that means that there'll be cause for discussion between them. I doubt it. Mark Webber coming out onto circuit now, so it looks like he's the first to perhaps put together a few flying laps. Everybody came straight back in at the end of their first lap to check all the systems were okay after engine and gearbox changes overnight.
Yes, and just hearing from Giancarlo Fisichella that clearly the handling balance in these conditions quite different to how they were on Friday morning. Track, of course, is dry, but the temperatures are slightly lower, and you've got this very high level of humidity. It's 92% right now. So drivers just relearning the track. It's got a different personality this morning. Clearly a lot more rubber you can see on the racing line. And coming down now, this is the back straight, coming into turn 8, an area where we saw a lot of errors in driving. It's not a difficult corner, but it's easy to overrun the corner, and I think, as Martin Whitmarsh might have explained yesterday, that quite frequently a driver comes down there and he maybe thinks he can brake at a given point, but maybe he's gotten to that point a few miles an hour quicker, and it's only that small margin that can make a big difference.
Inside the McLaren pit then, David Coulthard waiting to come back out. Third fastest yesterday, he and Kimi Raikkonen third and fourth. They're putting in their times towards the end of the session after it didn't look as though they were doing anything special early on. We're riding now with Mark Webber, and this is, of course, over the start-finish line and heading down towards turn number 1.
Well, the time we need to keep an eye on is the time that was recorded yesterday by Michael Schumacher, a 1:13.5.48. Now, we don't expect Mark Webber or Minardi to get anywhere near that in this initial run. If he does, it'll be a huge shock, I think, to everybody, and there'll be suddenly an exodus to the pit lane to go out and do some laps.
That's right, yes, but let's just remind you that we had a number of cars yesterday from third place all the way down to 18th place, basically covered by a second. So Mark Webber, of course, in that group. The time he set yesterday was a 1:15.6, and that was only 7/10 of a second slower than David Coulthard in the McLaren. Just shows you how evenly matched they were here yesterday.
Yes, and Jacques Villeneuve, in an interview with him as well, has mentioned that this is one racetrack, which principally because it's not a particularly difficult racetrack, yet it does have that very, very long straight, 1,822 metres from here. So people argue about horsepower, the value of horsepower. Well, people are balancing it by taking wing off, as Minardi are doing, trying to get good straight line speed. Villeneuve saying our top speed's good, but the time it takes us to get there is not so good.
So 1:14.1, that's a quick time straight
well,
away.
That's 1.5 seconds quicker than he did yesterday. So clearly the track conditions are superior, quite a lot superior to what we saw at the end of that second 1 hour session on Friday afternoon.
So we're going to see some pretty rapid improvements, I think, here this morning, with conditions looking fairly good, it has to be said. Meanwhile, while not much happening on track at the moment, Nick Damon spoke just a few moments ago to Jarno Trulli.
Jarno Trulli, quick installation lap, and that's it. I mean, the weather's not really helping to get any work done now, is it?
Well, to be honest, the track is in a good condition, even if the temperature will grow up probably later, and everybody are waiting for that. I think we will soon start to run.
So how do you feel the car's going here? You've had a kind of recently, some tracks you've gone well, some tracks not so well.
Well, we have been struggling a little bit to find a good balance yesterday. We hopefully will do a better job today. We have changed some setup, and we will try to improve our car.
So how much is, I mean, when we come to qualify, we expect temperatures probably be 10 to 12 degrees warmer. How does that affect the way the car will handle?
Quite a lot, especially for all Michelin runners, as our tyres are very sensitive to the temperatures change.
Well, that was Jarno Trulli speaking a moment ago. Mark Webber's just set the second fastest time of the weekend so far, just a couple, well, a tenth slower than Michael Schumacher yesterday.
Well, I mean, I'm quite surprised. I did not expect to see such a huge improvement in Mark Webber's time, 1:13.6. That's done on a second flying lap yesterday. He did a 15.6. He's found 2 seconds in the pace of 2 laps here on Saturday morning. Now, obviously, the rubber on the track has made a difference, but something else has made a huge difference now. Just wait to see how long it is before we get other cars out. Alan McNish is the only other car that's gone out. He's on an out lap right now, but certainly quite a surprise for everybody to find 2 seconds straight out of the box being a gain for the Minardi and for Mark Webber.
Well, interesting stuff in the early stages. Meanwhile, Peter Windsor has caught up with Jordan's Gary Anderson.
Gary, a lot of work going on the spare car now. Can you just tell us exactly what your plan is now for Taco in qualifying?
Yeah, well, mainly because time is limited to get out in any of this free practice. We're taking the engine gearbox, the whole back end of the car basically off the spare car to put on the Taco chassis when it comes back. The regulations say you can't use a different chassis, you have to use the same chassis, so we've got to change all the rest of it really, which is the fastest way for us to get the car ready again.
Very good. And anything on the telemetry shown up yet? Exactly what happened to that engine?
Yeah, it just looks like it lost oil pressure. I mean, it's the fresh engine from last night, so it's been down to a build problem really. Don't really know why, obviously, but it's broken a con rod or something like that.
Bit disappointing in view of the progress Honda have made since Spa.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously nobody wants this sort of thing to happen, and the engines are very highly stressed, but as I say, it was the first lap out with a fresh engine, so I'm sure it was some sort of build problem. So a quality problem really.
Thanks very much, Gary. Best of luck.
No problem.
So Gary Anderson a little disappointed to see that. Meanwhile, Alan McNish is on circuit and he's putting in some good sector time so far.
Yes, he's got Olivier Panis just ahead of him, Panis on an out lap, but this lap I think we'll see Alan McNish improve on the time Mark Webber established it a few moments ago. Remember that time of 1:13.846. Well, he's in fact just a 1/10.5 of a second away, but as they come on now to the fastest part of the circuit, the Toyota Grunt surely must make up for that 1/10.5 of a second as we see those little vortex coming off the wing end plates. So he comes up start-finish line, 13.6 to beat. I mean, he's at 92 thousandths of a second away. And Olivier Panis, also Alec Young out on track. So 4 cars. Webber's just gone back to 3 cars on track, taking advantage of clear track. But obviously, very good track conditions indeed.
Yes, indeed. So Mark Webber stays fastest for the moment in the Minardi. There's a bit of a surprise for everybody. He was a fraction slower only than McNish yesterday, who suffered some drive shaft problems. But look at this, Olivier Panis, who also had mechanical problems yesterday, ended up way down in 18th place, is now on an improving lap.
Well, there's the high camera shot. You can see just how dense that mist is around the Indianapolis circuit. As Panis makes his way around into turns 9, into 10. So there's much better track conditions than I think anybody anticipated. The grip clearly must be there, because you wouldn't find 2 seconds straight out of the box as Mark Webber did, unless that is the case.
Well, he's still up on time, so this should be a new improvement. 13.6, the fastest that we've seen so far today. But we're expecting to see some pretty rapid times coming through very quickly now, as Olivier Panis goes faster on a 13.6.05. Just to remind you, last year's pole position time of 1:11.708, so we've still got a little way to go to that, but very much the early stages of free practice. Now, Jack Villeneuve also making it out onto circuit, so we've got both BARs on track, and as the 2 cars go on track, Peter Windsor is in fact talking to BAR team boss David Richards.
David, Jordan report that it was a sudden drop in oil pressure there immediately out of the pits. A little bit worrying though for the Honda runners.
No, not in the slightest. I think Honda have done a great job with us, and we feel very happy about our engine situation.
So when you see something like that, you don't think, oh, we need to start checking a few bits?
Not really. There's nothing we can check. As long as we've plumbed it up correctly and put the engine in properly and the installation's done satisfactorily, then we shouldn't have any concerns.
Is there much difference, do you think? I mean, I'm sort of reading between the lines here. Much difference between the way you kit an engine and the way perhaps other Honda teams kit an engine?
There are bound to be differences. I know the oil tank installations are different and things like that, but fundamentally they're the same.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Thanks very much, Dave.
Thank you.
Early days yet, of course, in this session. Here comes Panis again, 13.661, so a fraction slower than his previous best. But we haven't seen any of the real front runners coming out, except that now we're beginning to, because Barrichello's just come out on circuit, Jenson Button as well, and Juan Pablo Montoya. So now we'll get an even clearer indication, perhaps, of how quick the track conditions are right now. Ralf Schumacher just heading out on what looks like a new set of Michelin tyres, as the team through exactly which tyres they will use for qualifying and therefore for the race.
Yes, and Michelin, just going back to the comments that were made about McLaren, and they think that the tyre choice that Michelin have made may not be correct. Michelin pointed out in their press release last night that the performance of the tyre, the lack of grip, was due to the very green surface, and if you've got a very soft compound, we saw the result of that with all the rubber that was being rolled off the tyre, call it shearing off the surface of the tyre. That was offline. We don't see any of it here because the track, of course, has been cleaned up. We will see more of it, no doubt. But as the track builds up rubber, then the tyre wear will begin to drop and the grip will pick up. And I would expect to see Michelin in a very good shape when it comes to qualifying.
Let's just ride with Villeneuve. Oh, and as we try and ride with Villeneuve, Trulli is heading off track. And that's down at on the exit of turn 5, I think. We'll check that in a moment. But Jarno Trulli, no damage done. Looks as though he's been able to get straight back on again. Meanwhile, we're still looking at the onboard view with Villeneuve.
Jacques Villeneuve right now, who looks as if he could actually go quickest of all. He's had the fastest sector in sector 2, and now it's just this final blast around turn 13 and across start finish line. Looks so easy just sitting there watching him drive like, well, a Saturday morning run.
Across the line he goes. In fact, he goes 4th fastest for the moment. And we'll wait to see whether he improves on his next lap. Montoya has just come up to 6th fastest and is going fairly rapidly.
Well, let's have a look again and see what Jarno Trulli did. This is the little bit of trouble he got into just a moment ago. Locked up the front. Yeah, he got the left front locked up. And of course, once he gets offline, in fact, he's pouring steam off that left front. He didn't release the brake, or he has a problem with that left front because the right front was still rotating, but the left front was not.
Well, no damage done, as I say. Rubens Barrichello, look at Barrichello's time. He's up on the splits. No great surprise as the Ferrari begins to be pushed, but Montoya is also on a quick lap. Montoya, Button's just gone fastest overall. So now we wait for Montoya to come through. We'll see some quite rapid changes, I think, in the order coming up here as Button has set the pace initially. Barrichello, well, he goes fastest now. Rubens Barrichello.
Montoya is going to take that. We think he has 12.986. So he is the fastest man on the track and the first man to break that 1 minute 13-second barrier.
So that's a bit of a boost for him. But Ralf Schumacher, look at his split time. He's massively up and he's not completed the lap yet. He's nearly 0.3 of a second faster than Montoya to that point. So this could be an extremely good lap. And he's got the benefit of a tow here from Kimi Räikkönen. That could help his terminal velocity. 335 kilometres an hour, 210 miles an hour set by Olivier Panis, the best so far, as Schumacher goes fastest.
Yes, 12.645. Now part of the big lock-up from Räikkönen he had to take. Evasive action goes, misses the corner. Part of the reason that we're seeing these high top speeds is because we've got this incredibly dense, moisture-laden air. And of course engines do love that. That guarantees good horsepower, but it also helps with downforce.
So it's a 1-2 for Williams BMW currently as Rubens Barrichello stays out there for another lap or two. Michael Schumacher still in the pits. He's only completed his installation lap. We've yet to see much from the world champion, but I'm sure that he'll be setting the pace once again. He was very, very quick yesterday as soon as he was on a flying lap. Across the line, Barrichello does snatch the fastest time.
Yes, and he benefited from a little bit of a tow from the back of David Coulthard's McLaren Mercedes. And again, high top speeds, 337 kilometres per hour. That clearly is the benefit. Here's Räikkönen into turn 1, locks it up. He was very late in the brakes and he had that momentary lock-up. He decided, oops, I'm not going to attempt to go into turn 1, maybe get it wrong, and then penalise myself even more severely. So he just went down the escape route and rejoined the track. Yet again, Ralf Schumacher piling on the pressure, fastest in second sector, comes across start finish line as, well, Renault's off the track again. Ralf stays second, Barrichello still quickest. And it's this time Jarno Trulli, but down at turn 11.
Yep, he seems to be exploring various parts of the track this morning, doesn't he? As he rejoins, we're on board with Montoya, who's just set the fastest first sector time.
He's got Salo ahead of him, and that's going to come into play. They'll make a Salo just on and out. Well, he's on a time lap. In fact, this is the first sector time he's just gone through. It shouldn't affect Montoya. He's far enough behind as he comes out of 10, now down into 11. So it will not impede Montoya, but he didn't improve overall. He improved personal best. Coulthard goes quickest at a 12.505.
Great lap from Coulthard. So now we're seeing everybody a little more evenly matched right at the top end. We saw them evenly matched midfield yesterday. Let's see whether Montoya is now going to eclipse the time that Coulthard's just set. Across the line he goes, and no, it's not enough.
In this lap, 51 into the box. We're meant to go to ABS 1. And we'll change to AM4. We're shot.
Good speed as well, 332 kilometres per hour, although Barrichello's is still top speed overall. Coulthard, Montoya, Barrichello, Ralf Schumacher, Jenson Button and Eddie Irvine are top 6 so far.
And Button improving in that first sector. We've seen teammate truly being off on 2 corners. So far Jenson Button doesn't have that problem, but back to David Coulthard. He has further improved in first sector. So Coulthard on a run. This is his 5th timed lap of the morning.
McLarens have always gone well here. Look, he's up on the pace once again. They've never had a pole position on this Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit, but they've been in position to win both times. They did win last year, courtesy of Mika Häkkinen, and Coulthard showing that they could be in good shape here. Let's see whether this is yes, it is another improvement, a 12.3 from the Scot, as he looks to use that McLaren aerodynamic efficiency perhaps to its utmost on this track, which combines the twisty section with a long flat-out blast.
Ben, I think that the key to the times we're seeing are very much in the tyres. That the comments made yesterday about the tyre maybe not being the right choice, I'm glad to say that's proving so far not to be correct. Now, of course, we've got a lot more running to do today, but right now Coulthard, Montoya on Michelin's, Barrichello and Bridgestone, Ralf Schumacher, Button, Salo, Irvine, truly all on Michelin, and then the next Bridgestone runner is Nick Heidfeld in 9th, and then he's got another Michelin runner ahead, Pedro de la Rosa in 10th place.
Everybody's on about a 12.5. The balance getting worse lap by lap. The car's going off much.
No, not that bad. I'm turning oversteer at the brakes. If you look in the mirrors a lot. And DC like turn 2. I don't know why they changed it. Yesterday was fine. Now today I pick up the throttle and pull through it. It just doesn't go anywhere. Get some understeer apex to exit. Both laps. But it's really...
Well, as Montoya continues his notes, we watch Michael Schumacher onto his first flying lap of today. Fastest yesterday by over half a second from a surprise Eddie Irvine, second fastest for Jaguar. Currently Irvine is 8th fastest this morning, and as ever Michael Schumacher attacks.
Well, Michael Schumacher on his first flying lap. Remember, Ferrari did wait out some time. Look at that, half a second in that first sector. Well, I mean, this is typical Michael Schumacher. He lets people go out. They work down to a time. Everybody draws a breath and think, well, how did they do that? And there he goes, half a second in a 22-second sector, up on what was previously the quickest. So really, maybe Ron Dennis was right. Michelin have not got the right tyre, because Ferrari and Bridgestone once again appears to be not just the class of the field, it is the only field here in town today.
0.8 of a second up at the second split. Everybody else is covered by a few tenths of a second, as you heard the Williams guys say to Montoya. Well, everyone's doing mid-12s at the moment. Oh no, they're not. Michael Schumacher's on track. He's going to be in the 11s, and this is just typical of the man at the moment. He has so much confidence. Let's see what the time is. It's a 1:11.2, faster by 1.1 seconds.
And then that's a half a second quicker than last year's pole. 11.7 was the pole time for Michael Schumacher, and already that's been decimated. Let's look and see Jaguar. Oh no, that's a very late cut from Montoya. Now what's happening?
Yes, I think we were just looking at that very late cut
yes.
in. And then the Jaguar, did it come around past the Williams perhaps as they came in?
Well, I think that was probably... I don't know whether there's a confusion over which of the lines is the line that relates to the speed limit, but the Jaguar did squirt past, and virtually the pit lane is live of activity. There's nobody out on track other than Mark Webber, and Alex Young has just gone out. Takuma Sato, of course, he is out for this session.
Think about weight at the moment. Do you think it's worth moving a little bit of weight forward?
Well, we're not quite hearing Montoya's response there. Just a quick note, John, that that lap that Michael has just set half a second faster than last year's pole time. Just a remarkable thing, just to remind everybody on that, because to be that quick on the free practice session early on, I mean, normally by the end of these two 45-minute sessions, we get to see them going even faster, maybe up to a second faster than that. So just how far is it going to be ahead of what we saw last year?
Well, I think, in spite of the conditions maybe not being ideal for the race fans, the spectators, look at those massive grandstands. It'll be nippy sitting up on the top of those. But for a Grand Prix car with very dense air, 92% humidity, great for the engines, good for the downforce. As long as you can get tyre temperature, then it's the quickest condition that you can pretty much run a Grand Prix car in. Now that burns off, as we would expect it to do, as the afternoon sun comes up and burns through that hazy, misty morning. Then track conditions may not actually be any quicker. Where the speed will come from is just literally by taking out the fuel, and those drivers have got the capacity to do the blinding one-lap runs which Michael Schumacher, Montoya, Ralf Schumacher, Kimi Raikkonen, Coulthard and others are capable of doing.
Michael was
high load, which should give half millimeter less at the wheel.
control. They've put in place their own MD or CEO, which will free up Mario Willen to do the job that he is best at doing, which is actually designing and producing racing Grand Prix engines.
Sir Frank Williams keeping close eye on proceedings, of course, as ever. Both he and Ron Dennis were in that press conference yesterday afternoon. Once again, of course, understandably being questioned as to how they go about beating Ferrari, looking ahead to next year. Of course, Williams have just announced that they're building a second wind tunnel. Now, all that's part and parcel of trying to raise the level again, trying to challenge Ferrari's dominance at the moment.
Part of the reason Ferrari have this success is they've got exceptionally sophisticated aerodynamics on that car, as well as having, powerful engines, and benefiting from the sole attention of Bridgestone. Although Bridgestone do supply other tyre companies, as once again we see a Renault, this time Jenson Button gets it all wrong up on turn one, and he just gets it onto the grass. And there you can see just how damp it is as the steam comes off from the front of, and Jenson puts his hand up, sorry guy, I messed up your corner. But Montoya out, quickest for him so far in this first sector, but still 0.3 of a second down on Michael Schumacher.
Traction control is absolutely crucial through some of these corners. Now that's a tough corner, an interesting corner as well. That's turn 11, and to get through that corner quickly is what then determines speed onto the long flat out section.
Yes, and he was a little bit apprehensive going through. You could sense that he didn't really feel the car was 100% there, but he's going to improve in time. 12.5 is his best, he's now up to a 12.1.
So third fastest, Montoya moves ahead of Coulthard. Raikkonen, meanwhile, is looking to improve. He hasn't really set a quick flying lap yet, so this is really his first true flying lap. Let's see where it puts him. A 12.3 puts him fourth. Of course, his tyre's fresher than others because he's done so few laps in this session.
So Kimi Raikkonen improves. We watch Michael Schumacher now back up a 1/10 of a second down in that second sector. But of course, the tyres have had a run, a complete set of 3 laps. So the best of the tyre is gone. But Ferrari will continue to work and improve the car. This may be a longer run for Michael Schumacher, so let's keep an eye and see whether he does more than maybe 1 or 2 flying laps. He's just a 1/10.5 away from what he did, and in fact his fastest and second fastest laps are still quicker than anybody else.
Yes, yeah, very interesting. Let's just watch Coulthard. Comes across the line, going on to a lap now. Through the S-bend, turns 1 and 2. Now, quick right-hander coming up here. This is just flat out through here, no problem. On the brakes again. Uses a lot of the road. Now through another quick little kink. And then it gets a bit twisty again as he does the left hand right onto the back straight on that infield section. But at the moment, having seen Michael Schumacher put in another quick lap on tyres that have already done laps, McLaren know they're up against it once again with Ferrari.
So Coulthard has made an improvement in that first sector. It's a personal best. And now coming up behind Jenson Button and the Renault. We saw Jenson a minute or two getting it wrong in turn 1. Shouldn't be a problem for Coulthard as they now come out of 10. And then into 11, what Coulthard is going to try and hope is he can pick up some of the draft, the slipstream from the Renault, but he's not near enough for it to be of any effect. In fact, Button's into the pits.
Coulthard flashes past these massive grandstands on the start-finish straight. Let's just see what the time is as he comes across the line. A 1:12.1, so that's an improvement. Puts him back into third, back ahead once again of Montoya. Williams and McLaren look very evenly matched. The problem is these guys, Ferrari, are some way ahead.
But David Coulthard, his own teammate, he was actually quicker in that first sector, has lost time somewhere in the second sector, so the battle between the two McLarens is currently going to remain in the favour of David Coulthard, as Raikkonen somehow or other lost half a second in sector 2.
Second best of the Bridgestone runners is currently Giancarlo Fisichella, down in 7th place on a 1:12.587, ahead of Irvine Salo. The next Bridgestone user down in 11th place, that is Nick Heidfeld. Heinz-Harald, just to remind you, of course, we haven't seen him on track on our pictures so far yet today, but he is driving the second Sauber, not Felipe Massa. Remember, he's sitting this one out in Brazil, but he is likely to be back for the last Grand Prix at Suzuka. But for this weekend, the man who was driving for Arrows, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, driving for Sauber here today.
Well, just over 5 minutes of this 45-minute session. It's gone so quickly. I think the shock of just the track being as quick as it was at the very beginning maybe have caught a few people unawares, also maybe have altered some of their decisions about what they're going to do. And to find a track picking up the best part of a second and a half, as we saw with Mark Webber on his second flying lap, and then Michael Schumacher doing an 11.2 as against a 13.5, over 2 seconds advantage for Ferrari. And Frentzen just getting into that turn one so easy, and he just keeps his foot in the brake. And that sort of tires, you can just see that flat spot as he drives over the painted part of the grass, and will not make that tyre redundant, but it'll certainly have a bit of an unevenness to it when he gets back up to speed.
Well, there is Frentzen. We talked about him just a moment ago. Says that he's driving like his granny. He doesn't mean that he's driving slowly, but the seating position is still not ideal. Steering wheel a little too close to his chest, and so he's finding that a bit tricky to deal with, but nonetheless was fairly happy with the progress he made yesterday. He's currently 14th, but he will improve considerably on this lap, I think. And let's just see where it puts him.
Well, he's got to beat Heidfeld. That's his target he has. He's just ahead of him by 2 spots, and he's about 0.3 of a second quicker than his teammate. That will make Frentzen feel slightly more comfortable.
Yes, indeed. So he continues on his way. Meanwhile, in the BAR pit, not very quick times being seen by either Jacques Villeneuve nor from Olivier Panis. They're 15th and 16th currently, and Panis having done 12 laps. Villeneuve's only done 8 laps so far.
It's interesting, they've got the engine covers off, they're working around the back of the airbox. I just wonder whether the problem we saw Takuma Sato have, and when Peter Windsor went and asked David Richards, were they concerned about that problem? Well, it may be totally irrelevant, but Olivier Panis is now finally back out on track. He's completed those 12 laps and got a personal best in second sector, so whatever the problems have been for Olivier Panis, certainly he's improving, but quite a long way from the time that Schumacher, Barrichello and Coulthard are achieving in the same part of track.
Scored a good point for 6th place last time out in Monza, of course. It was a strong performance by Panis, using a lightly fueled car, and in the early stages making the most of that, and making some good overtaking manoeuvres indeed. But this weekend, hopefully trying to qualify somewhere near the top 10. Villeneuve, the last couple of Grand Prix, has been the fastest of the Bridgestone runners apart from Ferrari. But I'm not sure that BAR are going to be in quite that same position here today. Coulthard across the line again. Consistent laps from David, but still some way off the pace of the Ferraris.
Yeah, his best lap, which was set a couple of laps earlier, was at 12.1. That last lap was at 12.6, which would probably be accounted for by just the drop-off in tyre performance. It could have been, of course, traffic around the back of the track. We didn't get to see the whole of Coulthard's lap, but here we get to see Jarno Trulli coming up to complete what will be Trulli's 14th lap.
9th place for Trulli. Fernando Alonso, the test driver for Renault, who will, of course, be race driver alongside Jarno Trulli next year as Jenson Button moves over to BAR. Keeping a close eye on proceedings, learning whatever he can. He's been testing for the team again in the interval between Monza and this American Grand Prix, so he's very much up to speed with what's happening with the car at the moment. On board now with Pedro de la Rosa, and the 2 Jaguars were very competitive yesterday. Currently Irvine is 8th fastest and de la Rosa 14th.
Yes, the changes to Jaguar have been as rapid as they've been dramatic. And Eddie Irvine very happy yesterday, and he did fire off a few bullets at Pedro de la Rosa after that incident where de la Rosa was neglectful in using his mirrors and Irvine was virtually alongside, and Irvine had to go off track. I'm sure there was no intention meant, though Eddie had been outspoken and critical of Pedro's influence on the team. The fact that the team really listened to de la Rosa when he was saying the problems were only aerodynamic, Eddie was saying that they were more fundamental.
But across the line there for de la Rosa, no improvement from 14th place. Now Peter is down in pit lane, keeping a close eye on proceedings as ever. Peter, what have you been spotting down there?
Well, actually, Ben, I was watching on these fabulous big screens they have here, exactly the feed that you're watching. The crowd here can see it too, and I was very interested to see that shot there of Coulthard going down the straight, and we can see a trail, a vapour trail on the underside of the rear wing, which I thought was quite unusual, and I wonder whether it was something to do with perhaps Adrian Newey's twin keel layout there. Should look out for that, particularly, as John said, in these very dense conditions. We can read quite a lot about the aerodynamics.
Good point. Yes, we're seeing some quite interesting vapour trails coming off the cars. It is characteristic of these conditions that we're seeing this morning. As you mentioned earlier, John, good for engines, also good for budding aerodynamicists to see airflow around the cars.
Well, just watching Nick Heidfeld, we'll get back to that. He just gets it all wrong. And does he stay on track? Well, yes, he does. He manages to keep it in control. But again, I mean, every engineer in the pit lane will be watching the screens, and there will be people in the pit lane who will do nothing else but watch and make notes, because it is such a competitive business. Anything that you get for free is a bonus.
Personal best through the first sector for Barrichello. This could be an improvement in this lap. Even though the checkered flag is out, he can still finish the lap off, so he might improve on his time. I doubt if he'll beat Michael Schumacher's fastest time in this session so far. Don't forget, it's only a half-hour break now for the teams before they're back out for their second 45-minute session of free practice. Doesn't give them a lot of time to make any major revisions, and in fact Barrichello is coming in, so he does not complete the lap. And I think we'll see most cars into the pits now. Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello ending the session with the fastest 2 times. Coulthard and Montoya are next up, very evenly matched to one another, but some way behind the performance of the red machines. Raikkonen and Ralf Schumacher also up there in the top 6, but I think Ferrari will be fairly happy. Barrichello didn't get many laps in yesterday after his accident, but he's certainly competitive in second at the moment.
And this magnificent pit lane with the garages below the hospitality, the race control tower, very much a modern circuit. And prior to the Grand Prix coming to Indianapolis, it was a very basic pit lane. Everybody worked literally on the pit lane, and they brought all their equipment, parked it up behind. A strange place to go. I went there, Ben, in 1977. I know you want to go through the times there.
All right, we'll come back to that, John. Michael Schumacher fastest overall then by just under half a second from Rubens Barrichello, then Coulthard and Montoya on the Michelin tyres. Raikkonen and Schumacher then next best of the Bridgestone runners. Giancarlo Fisichella in the Jordan. Eddie Irvine 8th fastest ahead of Jarno Trulli. Mika Salo getting into the top 10. I would wonder whether Toyota would be aiming once more to be in the top 10. They've done it a couple of times in qualifying this year. This could be another opportunity with great engine power. Heinz-Harald Frentzen 11th, Jenson Button 12th, then Heidfeld in the second Sauber, De La Rosa in 14th place. The 2 BAR Hondas, though, a little bit disappointing down in 15th and 16th places. It is pretty close, though, once again. They're about 1.4 seconds off Coulthard in third down there. Webber ahead of McNish, and Alex Young in 19th place. The only driver that didn't set a time on this occasion, Takuma Sato. Remember, his engine blew on the outlap.
Yeah, just to go back to what occurred back in 77, I was there with Penske, and I was standing behind the pit wall, and that's not the wall that's against the racetrack, it's just behind the pit wall. And one of the old guys that runs this place came along and said, "Hey guy, get your foot off that wall." And he was one of the old rednecks, one of the Hoosiers, who, you know, the tradition of this place continues through with all the members of staff in the pit lane, and quite a wake-up call for that European sort of ideal that we grew up with.
Yes, it's a very different environment, different place, but it's good to see the support for Formula One here at Indianapolis after all the years of enjoying their Indy 500. Now they get a chance to see close up the Formula One cars in action, and a reasonable turnout of fans on the infield section as well. So first free practice is over. Ferrari have dominated proceedings once again. I wonder if that's going to be the story as we go through the rest of the day. It certainly looks quite likely at the moment. Coulthard and Montoya not too far behind, and indeed Ralf Schumacher setting the 6th fastest time, and I do believe we've got the opportunity to say hello to Ralf. Good morning, Ralf. Thank you very much for joining us with our coverage. Just tell us a little bit about the track conditions, because it's very clear straight away everybody's going much faster today than they were yesterday. How come?
Well, that's pretty obvious. I mean, yesterday a lot of teams were working for Sunday, had far more fuel on board than today. I mean, today we are preparing for qualifying, trying to get the best out of the car.
What about the actual grip levels that you're now getting? Have you noticed a good improvement? Obviously, that infield section of the track doesn't get used very much, and now it must be cleaning up pretty well.
It's cleaning up and improving day by day and session by session, you feel that, but it's still not to the degree we, as a racing driver, would like to see it.
Ralph, good morning, it's John. Before this event began, I predicted that Williams BMW would win this race. Will you win it, or will Juan Pablo win it?
Well, as it looks in the moment, neither of us will win it. I mean, look at how strong Ferrari is again. So we'll have to wait and see. I think qualifying is going to be tight again, but if Ferrari maintains the speed that it had yesterday and the consistent lap times that it this morning, I think it's going to be very difficult for us.
Pretty disheartening for you guys, isn't it?
No, sorry.
That's okay. I'm just saying it's pretty disheartening for you and the rest of the team to think that your brother and Ferrari can come here on a track where everybody thought you, Michelin, BMW would have been at least competitive.
Well, we are competitive, but this circuit is definitely a worse circuit for us than Monza was, because it has a tighter infield, and that's where we usually, that's what we usually don't like. It might turn out to be better in the race. I mean, it's pretty cool this morning, so it's early to say now.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, Ralph, and best of luck with the build-up towards qualifying this afternoon. Thank you. Now, as we look at Takuma Sato's car being winched back to the pits, it gives us an opportunity to look back over the highlights of this first free practice session.